Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of The Web of Fear, the fifth story of the fifth season of classic Doctor Who, starring Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. The Web of Fear is the 41st story overall. It's 6 episodes long and it's written by Mervyn Hainsman and Henry Lincoln. In addition, this is the first story to be produced by Peter Bryant. So, of all 6 episodes, only episode 3 is missing, but before 2013, only episode 1 was actually in the BBC archives. And episode 3 on the DVD is not animated, but they decided to go for a telesnap reconstruction. So the plot of The Web of Fate is as follows. In order to escape an attack in space, the TARDIS makes an unscheduled landing and ends up deep inside the London Underground. Here, the travellers soon find themselves engulfed in a thrilling battle with the Great Intelligence, and the Yeti, a deadly enemy set to invade Earth. But as events take a turn for the worse, it becomes clear that the Golden Prize is not just Earth, but the Doctor's mind too. Whew. So, in my opinion, The Oberfair is a good story. Very atmospheric, very scary, but I do see a few faults, and that actually put me off the story a bit. But let's get on to the good bits of the story, with a little bit of the things that put me off as well. The production, I think, was very well done. I think the London Underground sets were stunning, and to be honest, I actually thought that they were filmed in actual London Underground stations because the sets look very authentic, and even the BBC got a complaint from the London Underground themselves, thinking that the BBC went to actual London Underground stations and filmed there without their permission. And that was quite funny, to be honest. The plot was good, the script was good, and the direction by Douglas Camfield was good as well. But I feel that he could have done a little bit better, and this isn't his best work. And I like the scary, atmospheric feel to the story. The music that was playing throughout the story was actually helped the story to feel more scarier. And the mystery of the traitor was actually good as well, even though when what was his name again? Arnold, yeah, when he showed up towards the end of episode 5, it was pretty obvious that he was the traitor, and when he was actually revealed to be the traitor in episode 6, it did feel a bit anticlimactic, to be honest. The battle scene between the soldiers and the Yeti was well done, but it was okay, but I wish it was more action packed, but it was still enjoyable, and I like the visuals that came with the story as well, especially the web fungus thingy and how the web fungus thingy was actually playing in the credits. It's in the background as the names are rolling down one by one. So now on to the characters. Patrick Troughton as the Doctor, brilliant as always. But once again, this isn't his best performance. But he does impress, and I like the mini plot, and especially when the plot progresses in the last 2 episodes when the intelligence kind of takes over Professor Travers, and kidnaps Victoria, and then obviously he's trying to get the Doctor to cooperate with him to carry out his plan of wiping out the Doctor's brain, by capturing Victoria. But then he'll know that the intelligence wouldn't harm Victoria, because if Victoria actually came to any harm, the Doctor wouldn't actually help the intelligence at all. And I kind of like that, and it definitely does show that the Doctor cares about Victoria as well. So speaking of which, Jamie and Victoria, I think they were okay. This time, Jamie does more of the heavy lifting as opposed to Victoria, who I felt was a bit too jittery, especially in the part in episode 2 when the Doctor had gone missing, even though he was actually knocked out by the mini explosion, and Jamie was looking for the Doctor as well. And then Victoria decided to leave the common room and stumbled onto the train tracks herself, looking for them, like Doctor, Jamie. And to be honest, when I first watched this story, I actually found it very funny, but like, it really shouldn't have been funny. But to be honest, but Debbie Warden still did a good job, but she doesn't do a whole lot compared to the other characters as well. Jamie, as I mentioned before, he does a lot more in the story, and he actually impressed me. And despite ruining the Doctor's plans to actually expel the Great Intelligence from Earth, he actually does come up with the plan to use the Yeti that the Doctor was able to get a hold of, and pretty much raise hell and save everyone, and actually help the Doctor, even though the Doctor was very reluctant in wanting to let go, and then it just happened. But It was pretty cool for Jimmy. It did definitely give him some character development. I think this is definitely one of Fraser Hines' best performance. So now on to the side characters, who I would say they were really good. First of all, we have Edward Travers returning, now known as Professor Edward Travers, and this story, The Robo Fair, actually takes place 40 years after the events of the Abominable Snowman, and it's pretty obvious that Professor Travers has actually become very absent-minded and playing into the whole absent-minded professor trope, and it actually made his character more unique, and I actually like that. And we have his daughter Anne Travers, who very careful of Travers, and she actually really cared for her dad, and she was a very good character as well. I mean, I like the part when she was talking to, I think it was Captain Knight. He was asking her, "A girl like you shouldn't be doing here. What are you doing here?" And she was like, "I've always wanted to be a scientist ever since I was a little girl," and that was pretty cool, to be honest. And it was definitely good for Doctor Who to actually show women who actually were brave and actually do more daring stuff like this for the 1960s anyway. So now we have my personal favorite character of the story, the Welsh driver Evans. I love that guy. I mean, he was the main comic relief and he did that brilliantly. And the man was so goofy and stupid at the same time, actually made him likable. And obviously, the Welsh accent as well. I mean, I do kind of like Welsh accents. I mean, if you're Welsh, I'm automatically your friend. And it was actually very funny as well. And he was a very bumbling character. And he doesn't actually do a whole lot, but I still pretty much like. I think he was definitely one of those dark horse characters you just want to root for compared to the other popular characters that were there. We have that reporter guy Trolley, who's actually annoyed me, but I think that was obviously intentionally done by the writers. He was pretty much the red herring for most of the story, for whom the Great Intelligence actually possessed and was the traitor, and that was pretty much his whole bit for the story. And he actually disappeared in towards the end of episode 3 when Victoria told him about the TARDIS. We don't see him again until I think it was episode 6, 5 or 6, and then obviously he wasn't possessed by the Great Intelligence, and he actually revealed that it was Arnold the one that was actually possessed. So speaking of Arnold, one of the main guys, he disappears for a time and then he disappears and reappears. And it's revealed that he was the one that actually was possessed by the Great Intelligence and was pretty much betraying everyone. And that was as I mentioned before, was very predictable when he disappeared out of the blue and showed up out of nowhere. Something wasn't right. But he was still a good character, I must admit. And last but not least, we have the debut of Sir Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart, who is well known as the Brigadier of UNIT. But here he's not the Brigadier, he's actually the Colonel for the army that was actually there. And obviously UNIT hadn't been made yet, so he's in the army for now. And he was a good character, he was definitely loyal to the Doctor. I liked how very quick he was to believe the Doctor's TARDIS and the whole what's going on around the whole station and all that. But he was very trusting of the Doctor, and I actually like that as opposed to other characters we've seen in the past who would be very, very hesitant to trust the Doctor. But yeah, I actually like that, and it was pretty much clear. It was very clear that this man was going to be a very good character in the long run. But I didn't really understand why the writers had to make the Brigadier so creepy and mysterious when he first appeared in episode 3, when Victoria was still wandering around the tracks and she comes across the Doctor and the Colonel, but let's just call him the Brigadier for the time being, the not yet Brigadier. Yes, so let me start again. So, when Victoria is walking around on the train tracks, she finds the Doctor and the not yet Brigadier, and the not yet Brigadier was holding the Doctor hostage, and then they all go back to the main HQ, and then that's pretty much it. But then we see him again as the Brigadier of UNIT in the invasion in the following season. And to be honest, I think the Brigadier was actually better written in the invasion compared to when he was the Colonel in this story. And I would say Nicholas Courtney plays the Brigadier / the Colonel very well, and I think he's the greatest ally the Doctor has ever had, aside from the companions, of course. So to conclude, I think the side characters were very good, and we definitely see the debut of a very promising and a very prominent character in the Brigadier, known as the Colonel here. So now on to the villains of the story, the Yeti and the Great Intelligence, as they return for a rematch against the Doctor. The Yeti looked a lot scarier compared to the abominable snowman, and the acted scarier as well, especially with the whole web guns that would actually stun Spider-Man himself for obvious reasons. And obviously, we had the Great Intelligence, and the Great Intelligence was a lot more menacing, but because the Great Intelligence was so mysterious and so, what's the word I'm looking for? So ominous and very omniscient, and that's the word I'm looking for. You just It's just very creepy. Just watching your every move, you can literally just possess anyone at any moment, and that was quite creepy. And then obviously when he possessed um Professor Travers, when he possessed Travers, it was pretty obvious that the story wasn't really going to be that good for the Great Intelligence, because after he started showing face, well, speaking through our characters, it did kind of feel anticlimactic, and it just really wasn't that good. And I felt as if the Great Intelligence was better in the Abominable Snowman than he was in the Web of Fear. Even though the Great Intelligence's motive was good, but I did think the intelligence could be written a lot better, to be honest. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. So now on to the thoughts I have with the story. My main fault with the Web of Fear is that there is what is too long for the story. The plot is good, but it's ruined by the actual length of the story, and I think this is what most stories in this season actually suffer from. And I don't see a reason why episode 2 and 3 couldn't have been one episode together, because I thought episode 2 was just mainly filler because Patrick Troughton was on holiday, but they could have been done in a way to make the story a bit shorter, so have the break appear in episode 2 and maybe cut some bits in episode 5, and that'll be it, to be honest. And I did feel some parts really dragged for me, and especially at the beginning, a bit of the middle, and mainly towards the end, and I did find it a bit boresome. And in addition, I did feel that this story, The Web of Fear, is pretty much the same as the Abominable Snowman. Just replace the Detson Monastery, the London Underground, the the monks of Detson with the military, and change a few things, and it's basically the Abominable Snowman but set in the modern day. And another bonus that actually did put me off, that might be seen by other people as a bit unfair, but as a Londoner, I did find it a bit funny and a bit silly how characters were able to walk to different stations via the train tracks. It was a bit impossible. For example, like walking to Covent Garden, which is on the Piccadilly line, to Goodge Street, which is on the Northern line, and also I did find it a bit odd how Jamie and Evans were able to walk from Goodge Street, as I mentioned before, the Northern Line station, to Monument, which is all the way in the Circle Line. And the Circle Line is one of those above ground stations. This is one of those above line underground lines. And geographically as well, because Goodge Street is like near, I think it's a few minutes away from the Euston area, and Monument is in Bank, and that's near the Bank of England. That's like near, like toward, like coming out of central London into like the South London bit, and it was a bit weird, to be honest, and I did find it a bit funny as well. And they could have, I think it was possible that they might have gotten off at Tottenham Court Road and they probably would have walked to Monument, but they didn't mention that the Central Line had been taken over by the fungus. But there's my 2 cents. So to sum up, the Web of Fear is a slightly improved version of the Abominable Snowman, but some of the faults remain, and I will give the story a 7.5 out of 10. I did give it an 8 before, but obviously during this rewatch, I wasn't really that impressed with it, to be honest with you. So my next review will be Fury from the Deep, Victoria's final story, and stay tuned for that, ladies and gents. So thank you for watching this review. Let me know what you thought of this story and this review, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so already and spread the word, and I'll see you later, guys.